What did you think of this morning?
Great.
Yeah, can we get a round of applause to the panelists from this morning? Let me just say that as I stand here, this is a fantastic view for me. It really is quite inspiring to see you here in our courtyard, engaging in conversation, fellowship, which is so key to anything we're ever going to do economically. Is always going to come back to breaking bread with someone and learning a little bit about their story. So to have that happen in this place at this time is truly very special. So I really appreciate everyone taking the time to join us today and making this an event for us. It is our second annual, but it's our first one in person. And I think when we started it, we had this as the vision. Last year we had a slightly different vision. It was a Zoom screen. And so I think this is going to inspire everybody for the third one. So part of this is about bringing in individuals to give us perspectives. And one of the elements that is really critical for our business school is real estate. We're in Southern California. Real estate is a very important part of our economy here. Just coming from the previous session around wealth, it's a very big driver of wealth in our community. And we have a center for real estate here where we focus on understanding key concepts and trends in that particular space, housed right over in this building here. And so I'm really honored then for us to have just a phenomenal gentleman to talk to us about his experiences that have led to the creation of phenomenally successful and impactful real estate organization. And I'm speaking of Daryl Carter, who's going to be our speaker over lunch. Who was the founder, chairman, and CEO of Avaneth Capital Management, a California-based investment firm that acquires, renovates, and operates apartment properties with an emphasis on affordability and workforce communities. And if you've not heard of his organization, please Google it. Please look at some of the news articles, because it's not just about the fact that this has been a successful financial institution in terms of developing housing, but it is the way in which he's gone about doing it and the impact that it's had on thousands of lives all across this country. This organization has acquired over $2.5 billion in properties in 13 states, 10,000 apartment units. The numbers are impressive no matter how you think about it, but the story here that is really amazing to me, which I was so inspired when I first had the opportunity to meet Daryl, was the way in which they're doing it, the philosophy there about how they're truly building communities. And I'm sure he'll share a little bit about that as he goes through his story. He brings many decades of experience. I won't age you, but
I've done a good job of that myself.
Let's just say he knows what he's doing, and has done that with many different organizations in the past before he founded his own organization. He is well-trained. He has a master's in architecture and an MBA, both from MIT. He received his Bachelor of Science in Architecture from the University of Michigan, a Detroit native. And I believe when he was at Michigan, in addition to doing architecture, he also knows a little bit something about basketball and was on the basketball team in Michigan. I should say, if you ever look at an undergraduate program on any campus, architecture's got to be one of the most demanding things you could possibly ever do. And for you to do that and play at a Division I school in Michigan, that's just phenomenal. Probably just a sign of things to come, I would imagine. And he has received the MIT Sloan Distinguished Alumni Award and served as the 2015 commencement speaker for their graduation. He also is the chairman of the National Multifamily Housing Council and has served on many different boards, including Catalyst Development Company, Silver Bay Realty, and Whitestone. Listen, we're really, truly fortunate to have with us Daryl Carter. I'm going to pass over and allow him to share some insights and just share his story with us as we enjoy the rest of our lunch. Daryl, thank you very much.
Right. Thank you. Well, you know what? I'm going to improvise. Maybe I'll grab my notes and I'll come down there. My height keeps me from everybody seeing me up here. So, we improvise. All right. Ian, thank you for that wonderful introduction. It's great to be here today. The one thing that I found was interesting was the theme, the wealth for a digital world. I love what was written about the description of this conference. It says, wealth in its various forms is foundational to well-being. I don't know who wrote this, but it was pretty good. Racial wealth gaps persist in our digitally driven global economy. Disrupting this dynamic requires thoughtfulness, intention, and action. We will provide participants with inspiring and actionable ideas to address the wealth gap. I wish I had known that that was what I was supposed to do. That's a big task that you're asking me to do, but anyway, I'll give my best. A little bit about me. I'm from Detroit, Michigan. Anybody from Detroit? I know my buddy Lance is from Gary, just right down the street, but Detroit is a very unique place that has an impact on you. There was in 1920, the population of Detroit was about 900,000. In 1950, it was 1.8 million. And, it was filled with immigrants from the Philippines, Mexico, and as many of my parents and their friends and their siblings from Mississippi, because it's right up I-75. If you look at African-American migration patterns, it tends to go up the interstate. So people in Alabama, they end up in Cleveland. People in Florida, they end up, or the Carolinas, they end up in DC. But anyway, mine ended up in Detroit. And Detroit is a place, I mentioned the population was 1.8 million in 2000, in 1950. In 2010, the population was 700,000. So 1.1 million people left, I guess including me. And what's sad about that is my class in the 70s and the late 60s, there were protests at the University of Michigan to get greater African American enrollment. And the goal was to have 10% African American enrollment at the University of Michigan. Well, my class got to 9.5%. And it's the largest African American class that ever graduated from the University of Michigan. And I'll tell you, it was 1977. So what is fascinating about that is that about 80% of that group came from public schools in Detroit, Lansing, Flint, and Grand Rapids. So they were Detroiters. Fascinating thing, 20 years later, 75% of that group did not live in the state of Michigan. So that was your leaders, that's the wealth creators. And so, that watching Detroit in the 60s, 1960 through 80, gave me the perspective of what disinvestment looks like. And I always had the premise, if you could actually invest, then you could move things the other way. Detroit, really gave me many perspectives, and I learned lots of lessons and learned what adversity was. And I remember one of my best days in Detroit, I had a paper route and I collected, my paper route money. I had $40, which is a lot of money for a 12-year-old back in the day. But here was the challenge. My mother had, we were a bunch of kids, and she would go, every year you needed a new winter coat. I needed a new winter coat because I outgrew it. And my mother bought, in fact, she and her sister bought my cousin and I the ugliest winter coat there was. I was ridiculed by friends and even family. My mother said, that is an ugly coat. But, you can get something that you don't want to wear, you can change or something. But when you grow up in Detroit or Chicago, you got a winter coat, you got to wear whatever you got. So I hated that winter coat. And then I just collected my paper route money, and I wanted to go around the corner store to get some candy. So I walk in there, and there's a robbery. I'm like, shit. Excuse me. And this two guys with guns, and they said, get on the ground. And they're robbing the register. They rob all the people, and I'm right by the entrance. And one guy said, give me your money. And the other guy says, no, he's got to wear that coat. Let's leave that brother alone. So you start learning. I learned at an early age that sometimes there's, and after that, I wore that coat proudly. I didn't care. I'm like, oh yeah, it's ugly, so what, But, those are the kinds of things that give you the real resiliency to start and build businesses. And the one thing that I started looking at, Vanith is the second company I formed. I started another company called Capri Capital in 1991. We were involved in investing in, we had a debt business where we lent on apartments and we also bought apartments, but we were primarily focused on urban apartments in major markets, not necessarily the affordable sector. But we sold that company we sold our debt business and then I started looking at what to do next. And then I looked at the affordable housing business. And when I mean affordable housing, our company serves people generally at 30 to 60% of area median income. So in Orange County, AMI is about 100,000. So you do the math, that's who we serve. And one of the things we found was the customer service in that space was horrible. The way people were treated. Amazingly, people who are providing affordable housing, I go to a conference, it is the least diverse of all the real estate segments, which is pretty amazing. So that was an issue. And then the quality of the improvements, and the other thing, the financial discipline, and it's primarily driven by nonprofits, small developers who rely on tax-oriented financing and philanthropy, and so there's a huge inefficiency in the quality of that. And I felt that you could change, a bit of the paradigm about that. And I wasn't sure, but I said, well, give it a shot. And my driving principle was that we were going to be the best if you could bring high standards to that space, because there were not high standards in that space. It was always, well, there's Section 8 recipients, because half of our residents are Section 8 recipients. Hey, they don't deserve anything more. And that is the attitude that exists in a lot of segments in the real estate business by operators who serve that market. So we felt that if we could focus on customer service, making assets very high quality, financial discipline in managing our properties, but more importantly, creating a sense of, being respectful of our residents, where, we send a lot of we send our people, we have someone that comes in who does training for the Ritz-Carlton, and we train our on-site people, with how to address our residents. We never say tenants, we say residents. And when we speak to them, we say, what is the issue with your home? Because we, always want to make sure it's their home. And I'll go and walk through some of our communities, and some young, man will say, hey, that's the owner. And I turned to him and said, no, I don't own it. This is your home. I take care of it for you. And so that is our theme, that we are there to serve our residents. And I tell everybody, if we do that, we're going to make money. We're going to do, it's going to work very, very well. So that was the premise that we started it. That was 14 years ago. I'm pleased to say that I know we are the best in class in this business today in the United States. Sounds arrogant, but we are the best. And if you're the New England Patriots or the Chicago Bulls, you know when you're the best. And so we pride ourselves on that. And what are the things that we've done to make us have very, very high quality? One is we're very, very diverse. We have, of my leadership, the top 20 that are SVP or above, half are, I think we have 6 African Americans, 2 Latinx, 1 Asian out of the 20, so 9. And then we're, I think, 11 men and 9 women. And we're diverse in terms of age and all the other things. And that's really important, because about 70% of the communities we serve are Black and brown. And people, actually our residents, enjoy that we, the leadership of the company is diverse. Now they challenge us, and they want the maintenance requests done right away, but that's something that has been is very important to us. The other thing is we have many of our contractors. My largest contractor, I thought he might be here, is, if you guys know Tim Coffey, TEC Construction. Tim does a lot of my work, and and we try to get 30 to 40% participation when we are doing a renovation. So that's a key part of what we do. The second thing, we've really we tried to approach and say, what is the vision for what we do? And one that I found very interesting is Marriott Hotel. Because Marriott has the Ritz-Carlton and they have Marriott Courtyard. Now, when you think about it, I end up going and capital raising missions to Lansing, Michigan, or Olympia, Washington, places like that, and you're going to be staying at the Marriott Courtyard. And I will tell you this, that the way that you're treated, the way that they greet you, and if you're a frequent traveler in Marriott, whether you're at the Ritz-Carlton or the Courtyard, they greet you the same way. They certainly don't have the amenities of the Ritz-Carlton, but it's clean, it's safe, it's well maintained, and you're respected as a guest. And at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. So that's sort of the paradigm that we've had in building our company. By the way, the company name Avaneth comes from my two children, Ava and Nathan, who are the two biggest rivals. I've never seen a rivalry. It's worse than Michigan and Ohio State. Because she says, my whole name is in the company. He says, I got more letters. So whatever. And so, but when you put your kid's name on your company, you don't want it to be a clown show. You want it to be a very good company where people, the brand means a lot. So one of the things we've done in this space is doing some branding. So many of our property names start with A, because our company starts with A. So, and our little logo is a plus sign. So everything is, Acclaim at Ashburn, which is in Virginia, another A+ property. And so we use that theme, A+ over and over. Do we always get to the A+? No, we're not perfect, but we try, and that's everyone's standard. So that's one thing we do is the branding. The second thing that has probably been the most transformative is raising capital. It is very difficult to raise capital. I know it's a key part of our theme is raising capital. And at the end of the day, the capital drives every business. When we started this company, we went and, I had been in the business. This was the second company. We had developed a great track record with investing institutional capital. We got 4 investors initially to believe in us. And you always remember the people who first invest, and that was the Episcopal Church, PNC Bank, Wells Fargo, Prudential, TIA, and State of Michigan Retirement, hometown. So they invested in our first fund. Every one of those invested in our second fund, but our ability to really scale the business, we were just running into roadblocks in raising capital. Now, there are a lot of myths about affordable housing. People think of Cabrini Green in Chicago. They think of, a bunch of gangsters shooting each other. That's the image that people have. When in reality, our residents are hardworking people who are pursuing the American dream. And that's what our residents are all about. But you have these myths. Some of them are racial. I recall we had an investor that was looking at one of our properties in Loudoun County, Virginia. Now, I don't know, I know, Vernon, you're from that area. It's a very affluent, it is probably one of the most affluent counties in Virginia. It's just north of Dulles Airport. So we had an investor who was flying in, and he called me the day before and he said, Daryl, is there any chance that I'm going to get shot when I show up at your property? So I pondered it, and I said, well, I don't know your personal situation. I don't know who you owe money to. I don't know if you have an angry ex-wife. I said, so I cannot comment on personal factors that may impact that. But if you come to our property at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday morning, you will find that it's empty because everybody works and the parking lot will be empty. And unless those other mentioned factors come into play, it is highly unlikely that you will get shot. But, but that's unfortunately the mentality. And so one of the game-changing things that happened, and that was probably, my daughter was either 10 or 11, Ava, and she, who loves to talk. And she came to me and said, she was trying to figure out which language she was going to take. And she said, you know, Dad, I'm going to take Mandarin because there are more people in the world to talk to. And I said, well, that's great. And I said, you know what? You should do that. And you should figure out how to do business there and everything like that. And I looked at her and I said, you know, if I were younger, I'd really kind of do that myself. And she looked at me and she said, well, what's stopping you? Oh, I know that's right. All right. And I'm like, you know, that's true. What is stopping me? So next day I went in the office, sat down with my team, and I said, you know, this is just one country and there's a huge world out there. And I said, let's, you know, we kind of took on Asia, we took on Europe, we knocked on doors, and you know what? It's the same knocking on doors here or there, you know. And one thing that was surprising, it was particularly in Europe, the 4 countries we gained traction in were Germany, Switzerland, the Netherlands, and the UK. And 2 things that we immediately, they liked affordable housing. And they said, oh, we love affordable housing. We have that. And one thing that gets mixed up in this country is affordable housing and race and all this other stuff that just doesn't belong. But over there, they have less of that. And they call it, well, yeah, we love social housing. And you know, you described the Section 8 program. They said, oh, everybody has that over here. You know, everybody gets a little bit of some kind of housing subsidy. So we like that. That's a good thing. So that was the one thing. Immediately, they had a cultural affinity for our business. The second thing that was candidly just surprising as hell is that I would go into, I will tell you this, I probably went into a dozen meetings and I walk in, I remember we go visit this Swiss trust, and it's, you know, it's in Geneva, Switzerland, and everybody we see out there, you know, and it's a very prestigious thing. And I walk in the room, and 2 of the managing directors of the 4 were black. I'm like, what are you doing here? and it was amazing. Educated originally from Africa, educated in the US, and, you know, they were 2 of the decision makers. And we found, candidly, we found more diversity in places like that than we do in the US. I mean, it was an amazing thing. And so our 4th fund was our first, we got them in our third, we got our first European investors in our 3rd fund, and our 4th fund, which we closed at the end of 2020, which was $800 million, we had 55% of our investors were outside the US. And it's just an amazing thing. And, you know, we had the German Catholic Church, the English Anglican Church, they both were $50 to $100 million investors. And so, you know, that's been a real breakthrough for us. So today we have investors in, I think, 10 different countries, including Korea and Japan, and it's really transformed our business. The interesting thing is many of them, they've come over here to see what we do, and they said, can you do it over here? I mean, we have 1 in Germany, and I'm gonna tell you, we're in 14 states, and it's hard enough managing it in the US, but I probably have to think bigger, and, you know, maybe that's our next move. Anyway, so, you know, capital is the other big driver. The other thing is, you know, I am a data person, I am a numbers person, and Data is, people can say, you know, for instance, Section 8 housing, they'll say, oh my God, I don't want that. And people will say, you know, there are a bunch of, you know, and they won't say it, but I know what they're thinking. Bunch of black and brown baby mamas with a bunch of kids. The reality of it is Section 8, 95% of the people that work. And they, you know, they have families. A third of our Section 8 recipients are two-income families. They just happen to work at Walmart and they live in LA. So, you know, the narrative is what the perception is not what happens. And you know what convinces them is data. The default rate amongst all apartments is about half to 0.75%. So 50 to 75 basis points. Our Section 8 portfolio, the default rate is 10 basis points. Numbers don't lie. They don't. You know, you could say whatever, but they pay rent. They paid rent during the COVID. And so anyway, those are things, and we've also been big on technology. And many of the things we've done are really things that are done in the A space that we've brought to our space. Like, we've learned lots of lessons too. For instance, in most of our communities, you know who comes to the rental office if there's a problem? It's the kid, because in some they speak better English than their parents. So every kid has a smartphone. All we have to do is when they come to the rental office and says, you know, our stove doesn't work, you say, okay, sit down, you load the app on their phone, you show them how to do it, they never come back. We have about 75%, no, we have about 60% adoption on all of our maintenance applications. In the industry, it's about 40%. So technology can move the needle in many areas, including that. So all we've done is taken the best practices in the higher income and we've brought them to the lower income. You know, I will just conclude with, you know, just looking forward, a couple of things. One is I think the housing business, three industries I love that I think have tremendous opportunities: housing, education, healthcare. They're all have disruption and there's all kinds of needs in them. So I believe in those industries. I mean, I look at 3D technology. And the great thing, I've traveled around the world looking at what people are doing in housing. There are places that are now doing 3D printing for actually building components. And those are just, we are just scratching the surface here in the US. Lastly, I'll just end up with a coming attraction that I am extremely excited about. We're buying a very large community in South Central LA that is about 700 apartments. And I've been working on something to do that if we are able to pull it off, which we're getting close, I think will be transformative. And that is, we are going to take 5% of every resident's rent and we're going to put it in an escrow account, and that money they will co-invest with us. So all of a sudden every renter, thank you, every renter will become an owner and the ability to create wealth. As you know, the differential in black and white net worth is 17,000 versus 170,000, a 10x difference. Much of that is attributable to the home ownership rate, which is 73 and 43. So this allows people to create wealth, and we're going to do that through a crowdfunding mechanism to execute it. And so we're going to be rolling it out sometime in hopefully June or July. But anyway, that's it. Thank you.